I've filmed 3 videos about crimes committed in Japan, but this one is particularly exceptional. If you've been following the channel for a while, you may recall that I mentioned the case I'll be discussing today in another video about the Nevada tan. By the way, the story there is also simply monstrous. I recommend checking it out. So, according to international standards, Japan is considered one of the safest countries in the world. However, in those rare cases when something horrible does happen there, the criminal always seems to take the situation to the extreme. If you ask an English-speaking person who is not familiar with Japan about the most horrific crime committed there, they will likely recall Unit 731 or perhaps Junko Furuta, or generally any other high-profile case that gained worldwide resonance. But it seems that if you ask a Japanese person, more often than not, the first incident that comes to mind is this particular case, an incident that is rarely discussed. And in general, neither the press nor YouTubers are particularly fond of it, because the details are clearly not suitable for everyone. However, we will take the risk. Hello everyone. Welcome to the Paradox channel. Subscribe to the channel to watch intriguing stories related to crime and incidents. Now, let's begin the video. So, on the morning of May 27, 1997, the janitor of an elementary school in the city of Kobe went on duty. The morning for this man always started earlier than for the students and teachers, at the very break of dawn. But even in such a quiet and peaceful hour, there was a sense of unease in the air, and it had been there for a long time. The city of Kobe has not yet recovered from a series of terrorist attacks that occurred earlier in the year when an unknown assailant targeted several local teenagers. In February, 2 schoolgirls walking home from school were struck on the back of their heads with a hammer. The criminal managed to escape before being identified. Fortunately, despite severe head injury, both girls fully recovered. However, as it turned out, this was not just an isolated incident. On March 16th, the same criminal struck again, this time targeting 10-year-old Ayaka Yamashita and 9-year-old Kazumi Ishikawa. Ayaka suffered a severe head injury, while Kazumi, who was attacked just 10 minutes later, was wounded in the abdomen with a sharp blade. Ayaka sustained a traumatic brain injury and passed away just over a week after the attack. However, Kazumi survived this harrowing ordeal. The attacker's blade narrowly missed puncturing a major spinal artery, and unlike the other victims, Kazumi was able to get a good look at the man's face. Detectives quickly realized that all 4 attacks were the work of the same person. Near each crime scene, he left his signature, mutilated animal carcasses. In one location they found a headless pigeon, and in another, a squirrel. And as May came to an end, 2 months had already passed since the last attack by the unknown maniac. Although he remained at large, parents, teachers, and students dared to breathe a sigh of relief, assuming that perhaps this disturbed individual had simply grown tired of it all, retreated into himself, or realized the errors of his action. However, the sigh of relief eventually turned into concern. On May 24th, a local 11-year-old boy named Junhase went missing, and everyone suspected that the elusive killer was responsible for his disappearance. On the morning of that fateful May 27th, the janitor approached the school and noticed small dark objects lying on the ground near the main entrance. As he got closer, he realized that these were the mutilated remains of 2 domestic animals. Initially, he didn't understand what was going on and continued on with concern, noticing another object at the base of the main gates. Upon closer inspection, he realized that it wasn't just an animal. It was the severed head of Junhase, the boy who had gone missing just 3 days ago. The eye sockets were empty. Small X marks were carved on the flesh. Inside the mouth, slashed from ear to ear, there lay a crumpled piece of paper with a taunting message written in red ink by the detective. "This is the beginning of the game. Police, stop me if you can." Just below, the criminal had also written a message in English with mistakes, and at the end, it was signed Sakakibara Seito. It was a pseudonym created using kanji characters representing sake, devil, rose, saint, and struggle. On the same day, 500 meters west of the school, on a mountain known as Reservoir Mountain, the headless body of a boy was found. It was carefully hidden, and it was soon determined that the head had been severed with a handsaw and subsequently mutilated with the same tool. Despite calls for information, no new witnesses came forward. Nevertheless, newspapers and television channels speculated that the likely perpetrator was a man aged 30 to 40 with a very robust physique. About a week and a half after the discovery of Jun's head, a brown envelope with no return address arrived at the editorial office of one of the largest city newspapers, Kobe Shimbun. Inside was a 3-page letter, written by someone claiming to be the orchestrator of the events. In the letter, which spanned over 500 words, but can be summarized briefly, the following was conveyed: "I am risking my life for this game. If I am caught, I will likely be hanged. The police must be more vigilant and persistent in pursuing me. Only when I commit violence do I free myself from constant hatred and find peace. Only when I inflict pain on someone else do I ease my own. The author stated that he would target schools due to his hatred for the Japanese education system, which according to him, turned him into a reclusive, isolated, and lonely individual. The letter was once again signed Sakakibara Seito. However, amid the general panic and confusion, Japanese media mistakenly referred to him as Anabara Devil's Rose. This mistake proved costly for journalists, as it prompted Sakakibara to send another letter to the news editorial. From now on, if you misread my name or ruin my mood, I will destroy 3 vegetables per week. If you think I only have my sights on children, you are gravely mistaken. The term vegetables was used as a metaphor for members of the general public. In other words, he explicitly stated that he would take 3 random lives per week if someone again mispronounced his name. In the end, a young man with a history of animal cruelty came into the investigators' focus. With the help of the victim Kazumi, they had enough evidence to bring charges against him. Finally, on June 28, a month after Jun's head was found near the school gates, this nightmare came to an end. The arrest of the 14-year-old suspect was announced. The public was shocked that the culprit turned out to be such a young teenager. Due to strict Japanese privacy laws, the suspect's identity remained unknown for decades. In the media, he was simply referred to as Boy A. However, quite recently, his real name became known as Shinichiro Azuma. He attended the same school as Jun Hayes, the very school where they discovered the head. Shinichiro Azuma confessed to authorities that on May 24, he lured Jun to the mountain promising to show him a giant turtle that supposedly lived near the reservoir. Together they climbed the trail upward. Once there, Azuma strangled Jun with a regular shoelace and then hid his body beneath the floorboards of the nearest cabin. The next day he returned with a handsaw and a black trash bag. There he removed Jun's head and even drank some of his, as he put it, pure blood. He explained that he was cleansing his own, which he considered impure, in this way. He also removed his eyes, stating that it was a way to extract his soul. He took the head home and then placed it at the main gates of his school early in the morning on May 27. In response to the question of why he did it, Azuma simply stated that on that day he felt a strong desire to kill. When he came across Jun, who was heading to his grandparents, he remembered that the boy loved turtles and considered him an easy prey. Azuma claimed to feel satisfaction from the fact that the boy now belonged to him. The reasons that prompted him to leave the head near the elementary school were twofold. Firstly, it was a diversionary maneuver. According to Azuma, detectives would never suspect that the killer would leave his creation near his own school. Secondly, he saw it as revenge against the school itself. In his opinion, the educational institution had destroyed his spirit and turned him into a semblance of his former self. During the interrogation with investigators, Azuma not only admitted to taking Jun's life, but also claimed responsibility for attacking 4 schoolgirls earlier that year, including Ayaka Yamashita, who succumbed to her injuries. Speaking about Ayaka, Azuma wrote in his diary, "Today I conducted a special experiment to confirm how fragile human beings are. I brought in a hammer when the girl turned to face me. It seems I struck her a few more times, but I was too excited to remember." On March 2nd, when Ayaka succumbed to her injuries, Azuma wrote again in his diary, "This morning mom told me that the poor girl who was attacked seems to have died. There are no signs that they will find me. I thank Bamoidakishin for that. The police are still searching for me." The identity of Bamoidakishin remains unclear. In one source, it is claimed to be a deity often depicted as the floating head of Buddha. However, why Azuma decided that this entity protects him can only be a matter of speculation. Nevertheless, the handwriting in his diary perfectly matched the letter sent to the media and the note itself. As a result, Shinichiro Azuma was found guilty of the murders of Ayaka and Jun and was sent to a juvenile correctional facility. His lawyers attempted to argue that Azuma was falsely accused of a crime he did not commit. Japan is generally notorious for having a conviction rate of 99.8%, and it is often criticized for imprisoning blatantly innocent individuals, forcing them to give false confessions. In general, his lawyers argued that the criminal was left-handed, while Azuma was right-handed. Additionally, the person who wrote the notes for the media used numerous complex figures of speech and intricate kanji, undoubtedly displaying a well-read and intelligent individual. With the utmost respect, they stated that Azuma, who at best achieved average grades, was not intelligent enough to compose such notes. Not to mention that in his own handwritten confession, Azuma claimed to have committed acts that were impossible for a 14-year-old teenager. These statements from Azuma's lawyer prompted his own mother to visit him in prison and ask him face to face if he was truly guilty of the crimes for which he had been convicted. Completely calmly and sincerely, he assured her that he was indeed guilty. On March 11, 2004, less than 7 years after his imprisonment, the 21-year-old Azuma was released from prison. Following his release, Azuma published a book titled Seka, Memoirs of the Murders of 1997. Despite public outrage over his attempt to profit from his heinous acts and torment the families of his victims, it did not hinder the book from becoming a #1 bestseller in Japan, making Azuma a wealthy individual. To add to the controversy, Azuma sent personal apology notes to the families of his victims, attached to copies of his own book, which was perceived as highly provocative. Attempts were made to ban the release of the memoirs, and some called for new laws prohibiting individuals like Azuma from publishing books related to their crimes. Psychologists later opined that Azuma was narcissistic and desperately in need of public attention. Despite it happening almost 26 years ago, the infamous case at the Kobe school is still frequently discussed in the land of the rising sun. It is considered one of the most notorious crimes in modern Japanese history. It had a significant impact not only on the psyche of the country, but also on its legal framework. Thanks to Azuma, the government lowered the minimum age for criminals subject to criminal punishment from 16 to 14 years. Perhaps the most frightening aspect of this case is that it could have been foreseen. However, neither his family nor Japan itself could foresee it until it was too late. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the Paradox channel and check out my older interesting videos. Goodbye, everyone.